So if you visit Karl Marx's grave in Highgate Cemetery over in London, you'll see this massive quote carved right into the stone.
Right, the really famous one about philosophers.
Yeah, exactly. It says, the philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it.
Which is, I mean, it's a pretty bold statement.
It is. And usually, when we think of changing the world on a systemic level, we picture like barricades.
Right, or mass protests, sweeping legislation, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Some kind of dramatic, spontaneous revolution.
Yeah.
But what if the blueprint for a totally new global economy doesn't actually start with a protest?
What if it starts with, like, your Tuesday night takeout order?
Yes. Welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to explore this highly detailed and, frankly, somewhat heretical manuscript.
It's called The Point Is by Mick Rice.
Right. And he's a lifelong labor activist and left-wing entrepreneur, and he's written this literal step-by-step blueprint for building a parallel global economy.
And the wild part is, he says it starts right in your very own neighborhood.
It does. But before we really dig into the actual mechanics of his blueprint, we definitely need to pause and address you, the listener, directly.
Yeah, this is important. Today's source material contains some very heavily charged political content.
Very charged.
Right. The author presents these sharp critiques of capitalism, of U.S. foreign policy, and he fiercely advocates for Marxist and socialist ideals.
So we want to make it abundantly clear, right up front, we are absolutely not taking sides here.
No, not at all. We are not endorsing his viewpoints, and we aren't dismissing them either.
Exactly. Our only goal for this deep dive is simply to impartially unpack the ideas. We just want to look at the historical arguments and the sheer mechanics of the system he's proposing.
Because, honestly, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, his underlying question is incredibly thought-provoking.
Right. He's basically asking who actually controls the infrastructure of our daily lives.
Yeah, and how you might bypass that system entirely. And to answer that, he actually looks backward. He argues that massive systemic change historically starts with these hyper-local, seemingly insignificant consumer choices.
So let's paint the picture of where he starts this historical timeline. Take us back to the 1840s in England.
Right, the period they called the Hungry 40s.
Yeah. Why does he start there?
Well, you really have to understand the sheer desperation of the time to get why this stuff matters. I mean, the Industrial Revolution had just displaced countless workers.
Right. Wages had completely collapsed.
Exactly. But worse than that, the food people could actually afford to buy was literally toxic.
Oh, this part of the text was terrifying.
Yeah, we're talking about flour that was bulked out with chalk.
Wait, actual chalk?
Chalk and plaster of Paris just to make it heavier so they could charge more.
That is just, I can't even imagine. And the text mentions tea leaves too, right?
Right, tea leaves that had already been used, dried out, re-dyed with toxic chemicals, and then sold again.
And even the sugar had sand in it.
Yeah. And to just compound all that misery, workers were frequently paid in tokens instead of national currency.
Well, like company scrip, so they could only spend their wages at the company's store?
Exactly. So it was a completely captive market. The prices were artificially hiked up, the quality was absolute garbage, and the industrial employers controlled both the wage and the survival infrastructure.
Wow. So in the town of Rochdale, 28 weavers basically decided they had simply had enough of this.
Right.
They pooled their meager savings to form a cooperative. And what's interesting is the goal wasn't a violent uprising. They just wanted to buy unadulterated, honest food at fair prices in bulk and sell it to themselves.
And this became known as the Rochdale Pioneers.
Right. And they introduced a couple of radical concepts to actually make this work, didn't they?
They did. First, they instituted a one-member, one-vote democracy.
Meaning?
Well, it didn't matter if you put in 10 pennies or 10 pounds to start the co-op, your voice was equal.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah, but the real genius was the divvy, the dividend.
Right, the divvy.
So any surplus the shop made wasn't hoarded by some board of directors. It was actually returned to the members based on how much they spent there.
But the author highlights a very specific detail about why this cooperative actually succeeded. And it basically comes down to women.
Precisely. I mean, the men might have been the founders on the charter, but the women were the household managers.
Right, they held the purse string.
Exactly. They were the ones who knew what chalk and the flour looked like. They had to feed their children.
So they were actively making the choice to walk right past the company store.
Yeah, risking the wrath of their husbands' employers just to spend their household budget at the cooperative.
Wow.
And their daily consumer choices built a movement that eventually grew to over 1,000 societies across Britain.
It's basically the original vote with your wallet movement.
Yeah, exactly.
But rather than just boycotting a bad actor, they were actively funding a parallel economic infrastructure.
Right. And Rice draws a direct line from the Rochdale pioneers to the U.S. Union Label campaign.
Oh, right, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries.
Yeah, it's another brilliant example of weaponizing everyday commerce. The Union Label actually started defensively.
Because cigar makers were facing an existential threat from sweatshops.
Right, so they started stamping a blue label on boxes of cigars that were made under fair union conditions.
Union made, best made. It was like a signal to the consumer that the product was made with human dignity.
Exactly. And again, women were the engine of this whole thing.
Women's label leagues. They became these fierce grassroots detectives, right?
You really did. They would audit local stores, organize their communities, and turn the simple act of buying a loaf of bread or, a hat into a political weapon.
But I have a pushback question here. If this tactic of localized purchasing power was so incredibly effective at building parallel structures, why did it just fade away?
It's a great question.
Because you barely see a union label on anything today.
Right. Well, the author identifies a fatal flaw in the campaign, and that flaw was nationalism.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, as globalization accelerated and manufacturing started moving overseas, the movement lost its foundational ethos.
So it morphed from protect worker dignity everywhere to simply buy American.
Exactly. It completely stopped being about the working conditions.
So it became entirely exclusionary.
Right. It pitted American workers against foreign workers rather than building international solidarity. And according to the author, that allowed multinational corporations to just divide and conquer.
Making supply chains into this dark, untraceable maze.
Yeah, the raw materials come from one country, the assembly happens in another, the packaging in a third. The power of that local label was completely broken.
Wow. So if globalization and digital supply chains crushed the old union label model, we have to look at who currently controls that infrastructure today.
And Rice is very explicit about who that is.
Big tech.
Yeah, what he calls the techno-titans. Apple, Google, Amazon, Meta. The manuscript argues that these aren't just successful consumer companies. He views them as modern oligarchies that are deeply, inextricably intertwined with the U.S. military-industrial complex.
Yeah, and the text points specifically to Elon Musk's empire as the prime example of this.
Oh, heavily.
Like, it's not just about selling electric cars to suburbanites. He points to SpaceX and Starshield, receiving billions in U.S. defense contracts to build classified military satellite networks.
And he argues it goes beyond hardware into active geopolitical weaponry.
Right, like the Starlink terminals.
Exactly. Rice points to the deployment of Starlink terminals in Iran during anti-government protests.
And he notes this was coordinated alongside U.S. financial warfare.
Yeah, specifically the U.S. Treasury blocking Iraqi banks from conducting dollar transactions just to squeeze the Iranian economy.
Wow.
He argues that this digital infrastructure is essentially a tool for state dominance, disguised as a tech service.
So meanwhile, how does he view the rest of us interacting with these companies?
Well, he uses this term techno-serfdom.
Techno-serfdom.
Yeah, he argues that we think we're the customers of these free apps or cheap delivery services, but we're actually the product.
Wait, when he says we are the product, he's talking about data extraction, right? He uses this phrase, platform rent. What exactly does he mean by that?
Think of it like a digital landlord.
Okay.
In a traditional factory, a worker uses physical tools to make a physical product, and the boss takes the profit.
Right.
But in techno-serfdom, our everyday behaviors, our clicks, our location data, our social networks, they're farmed without us receiving any wages.
Oh, I see.
The tech giants then charge advertisers and other businesses for access to us. So that tool they collect is the platform rent.
Wow, so we are generating the wealth simply by existing in their digital space?
Exactly, and they own the space.
So how on earth do you fight a digital landlord that powerful? I mean, Rice actually shares a deeply personal anecdote about this in the book, right?
He does. He actually tried to fight them directly. He attempted to build a UK union-backed rival to Amazon.
He literally bought the domain name, not Amazon.
Yeah. It's a fascinating case study in organizational failure, honestly.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Well, he thought, I'll just get the massive trade unions to pool all their institutional purchasing power, insist on union-made goods, and we'll create this ethical giant to rival Bezos.
And he went all in. I mean, he hosted a delegation from a successful Australian union shopping platform.
Oh, yeah. He bought a VW van, put new tires on it, and drove these Australians all over the UK.
Just to pitch this vision to the top trade union leaders.
And the result was complete apathy.
Really?
Yeah. According to Rice, he was entirely ignored by the conservative, bureaucratic leadership of these unions.
Wow.
They canceled meetings. They brushed him off. They just couldn't see the value of a digital infrastructure project.
But wait, this brings up a massive red flag for me.
What's that?
If major trade unions, entities with millions of members, millions of dollars, existing organizational structures, if they completely ignored him, how on earth does the author expect ordinary, busy, exhausted people to take on Silicon Valley?
Yeah, well, that failure actually forced him into a major strategic pivot.
Yeah.
He realized that relying on a top-down bureaucratic approach is just a dead end. You have to build from the bottom up.
Right.
And the tool to do that isn't a massive, centrally controlled corporate website. It's FOSS.
FOSS. Oh, free and open source software.
Exactly. Software where the underlying code is publicly accessible, modifiable, and critically not owned by a Silicon Valley landlord.
Right.
So he advocates using existing progressive open source tech infrastructure like the Action Network here in the US to build what he calls a hyper-local community shop app.
Okay, let's break down how this app actually functions.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is where a Tuesday night takeout order turns into a political movement.
Yes, exactly.
The strategy is to recruit local independent merchants. We're talking about the local Bengali-owned restaurant, the neighborhood farmer's market, the independent bookstore.
Right. The place is currently being squeezed to death by corporate delivery apps that charge like 30 or 40% commission.
Exactly. And the community shop app undercuts those corporate giants by charging a flat 10% commission.
And the app still acts as the middleman to facilitate the transaction, but here is the key difference.
What is it?
Instead of that 10% being siphoned off as platform rent to a server farm in California, it forms a community dividend.
So the profit stays entirely in the zip code.
Exactly. The users of the app in that specific neighborhood get to vote on how to spend that pool of money.
Oh, wow. So they could vote to fix a local playground or fund a community cleanup or subsidize meals for elderly neighbors.
Yeah, but the author stresses that an app alone isn't enough. It requires physical human connection to succeed.
Right.
It relies on volunteer street stewards.
Okay, the street stewards concept is fascinating to me. They act almost like union reps, but for a geographic neighborhood instead of a workplace.
Right. They deliver leaflets. They physically walk the blocks to audit the streets for potholes. They check in on vulnerable neighbors.
And Rice explicitly connects this geographical organizing to a very specific historical event, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. The Paris Commune of 1871.
Right. After the disastrous Franco-Prussian War, the working people of Paris essentially took over the city and ran it themselves for about 2 months.
But the author points out that how they organized is what matters today. The Paris Commune didn't organize by factory or trade.
Right.
They organized by geographic neighborhoods called arrondissements.
Which is a stark contrast to the Soviet model later on, which organized via massive centralized factory councils.
Exactly. And the author argues that in today's world, the Soviet factory model is just dead. We live in a deindustrialized gig economy world.
Right. People work remotely. They drive for Uber.
Yeah. The massive shared factory floor where thousands of workers could organize is largely gone in the West.
So true.
Therefore, the neighborhood is the only logical, physical place left to organize the working class. The community shop app just serves as the digital glue for that physical neighborhood.
It's like building a shadow city council.
Yeah.
You start by just managing the neighborhood's delivery fees and fixing a few potholes. But once you have everyone in the zip code relying on this app, you suddenly have the infrastructure to hold your own election.
Exactly.
You download the app because you want a cheaper tikka masala on a Tuesday, but by using it, you're accidentally funding a localized primary election that bypasses the traditional nation-state.
That is precisely the author's ultimate goal. Once the app reaches a critical mass of users, the community uses it to directly select local political candidates.
Wow.
Rice argues this hollows out the traditional top-down political parties, replacing them with a federation of community movements. You shift the base of political power away from wealthy party headquarters directly to the local neighborhood bloc.
That's wild. But if neighborhoods use this app to bypass national political parties locally, How do they bypass the global financial system?
Right, that's the big hurdle.
Because ultimately, big tech and the U.S. military still dominate international trade.
This is where the manuscript reaches its most ambitious phase. Rice proposes the creation of the Cooperative Monetary Unit, or CMU.
The CM.
Right, and to understand how this could even be possible, you have to look at the sheer, often invisible scale of the global cooperative movement today.
It's staggering when you look at the numbers. The text notes there are 1 billion cooperative members globally.
Yeah, 1 billion.
They generate $2.2 trillion in annual revenue. You have massive agricultural co-ops in Kenya, the Amul Dairy Cooperative in India.
They are an absolute economic powerhouse. And the author proposes that these cooperatives form a new parallel currency to trade internationally with each other.
Explicitly designed to completely bypass the U.S. dollar.
Because currently the U.S. dollar enjoys what Rice calls an exorbitant privilege.
Right. Because oil and the vast majority of global trade are priced in dollars, the U.S. can run massive deficits, print money, and effectively export its inflation to the rest of the world.
Yeah, but more importantly for the author's argument, it allows the U.S. to weaponize the financial system itself.
Right.
If a nation, a bank, or a business crosses U.S. foreign policy, they can be cut off from SWIFT, the international payment messaging system.
Meaning they can be completely debanked and isolated from the global economy.
Exactly. So the CMU is a way out of that trap.
But wait, when you read about the CMU in the text, it says it's not a fiat currency.
No, it's not.
By fiat, he means it isn't just money printed by a government with nothing backing it but trust. Right.
Right.
It's actually tied to physical reality.
Exactly. It is not backed by debt or government decree. It is physically anchored to what he calls a standard basket of commodities.
Okay, what's in the basket?
5 specific things. 5 kilograms of wheat, 3 kilograms of rice, 2 liters of oil, 2 kilograms of sugar, and 10 kilowatt hours of electricity.
Wait, literally physical items, like the value of the currency is literally defined as the cost of wheat and electricity.
Yes. That specific basket is the value of 1 CMU. Every day, national cooperatives would calculate the local currency cost of that exact basket of goods, which then sets the exchange rate.
Oh, wow.
But it goes further than just commodities. It incorporates ethical standards through a fair trade premium.
Oh, this mechanism is incredibly clever.
Yeah, explain that part.
So, if a producer can prove they pay a living wage, which the book classifies as Tier 2, or that they provide pensions and parental leave, which is Tier 3, a 5 to 10% premium is added to the price of their goods.
Right.
But that premium isn't just handed over blindly. It's held in escrow until an independent audit proves the workers actually received the money in their pockets.
It's a great system.
But I have to ask a massive logistical question here.
Go for it.
If we are trading based on baskets of wheat and fair trade premiums, isn't this just a giant, messy barter system?
You'd think so, but no.
How does a coffee co-op in Kenya actually trade with a software tech co-op in Europe without U.S. dollars changing hands? Where does the money physically come from?
Right, it's not a barter system because they aren't directly swapping coffee beans for lines of code. The mechanism is a shared digital ledger run by what Rice calls a central clearing union, or CCU.
How does that differ from a normal international bank?
Think of it like keeping a shared bar tab among a group of trusted friends, rather than using a credit card company that charges you 20% interest just to record who owes what.
Okay.
When the Kenyan co-op sells coffee to the European co-op for, say, 50,000 CMU, the money doesn't come from a central bank vault. The money is literally created by the act of trade itself on the ledger.
So the ledger just credits one account and debits the other simultaneously?
Exactly. The Kenyan account gets plus 50,000, the European account gets minus 50,000.
Oh, I see.
The trade creates the currency. There is no external bank loaning them the money to make the trade.
That's wild.
And here's the crucial part. If a nation imports too much and their balance goes too negative, they hit a credit limit. To balance it out and get back to zero, they must export real goods back into the cooperative network.
Meaning there is no compound interest continuously growing their debt.
Nope.
And there is no international monetary fund swooping in to demand austerity measures or forcing them to privatize their public water and rail assets to pay off that interest.
Exactly. It mathematically forces balanced trade.
Right.
And because this ledger operates on its own closed, open source system among international cooperatives, it completely bypasses the traditional banking infrastructure.
So it cannot be sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury.
Right. It cannot be disconnected from SWIFT. It is an entirely parallel, self-sustaining circuit of global trade.
Okay, let's synthesize this incredible journey we've just been on. We started in the desperation of the 1840s, with Victorian weavers pooling their pennies to buy chalk-free flour.
Yeah, quite the jump.
We looked at the author's failed attempt to build a union-backed, not Amazon, by touring the UK in a VW van.
Right.
We explored how a simple neighborhood takeout app with a 10% commission could act as a shadow city council, organizing people block by block like a modern Paris Commune.
Yeah.
And we followed that thread all the way to a debt-free global currency backed by wheat and electricity, specifically designed to bypass the U.S. military-industrial complex.
It's basically a blueprint that connects the absolute smallest unit of society, your daily purchase, to the largest geopolitical financial structures on Earth.
Yeah.
It argues that they are fundamentally the same mechanism.
And bringing it all back to you, the listener, whether you agree with Mick Rice's socialist end goals or you vehemently disagree with them, his blueprint forces you to look closely at your everyday conveniences.
Absolutely.
Your Tuesday night takeout, your cloud storage, the bank that holds your savings. It forces you to ask, who actually owns the infrastructure of your life?
And what are they doing with that power while you aren't looking?
Right.
It really emphasizes the idea that infrastructure is never neutral. The systems we use to feed ourselves and communicate are always political.
And that leaves us with a final provocative thought to mull over.
What's that?
We are rapidly moving into an era of artificial intelligence. Very soon, AI agents will be making our consumer choices for us.
Oh, that's true.
Auto-ordering our groceries when the smart fridge is empty, managing our subscriptions, picking the most efficient delivery services.
Which completely removes human agency from the point of purchase.
Exactly. If the Rochdale pioneers and the Union Label movement relied on human beings actively choosing solidarity over convenience, what happens next?
That is a great question.
Will an AI ever be programmed to look for the modern Union Label? Or will it just ruthlessly optimize for the absolute cheapest price and the fastest delivery, completely stripping away our human ability to actively choose a better system?
Yeah, if we outsource the daily choice of where our money goes, we might just outsource whatever power we have left.
The philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Next time you open an app to buy something, take a second to think about the real power of that purchase.